Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Wookiees, Ewoks, Vulcans, Klingons, Romulans, Cardassians, Andorians, Borg, Ferengi, ghouls, ghosts, goblins, werewolves, vampires, zoonoids. I'm just fucking with everyone. As many are aware by now, it's been an entire decade since the inception of my project, during which I would cover the most mature, most difficult, most complex, and most obscure range of game titles that many have coveted, and at times feared and scorned over. In the case of a few of my other video diatribes back then, I wish I could have taken a few others more seriously, and have been more coherent in my perspectives, the latter of which I have yet to improve on beyond belief, beyond reason, and then some. Also, to be completely honest, and without any speck of remorse I might add, I was, and still am even to this day, sick and tired of the hype over the everyday flagship platformer and puzzler franchises, whose titles I'm in no position of mentioning whatsoever, with the obvious exception of these familiar clips shown here.
That home, E.T.
Oh, it's you! I wasn't sure if you'd escape those annoying little creatures. Of course, they wouldn't bother me, but here's a hint. Metal armor is fireproof, but a charge attack will take care of them.
And even the current and next generations of gaming we can't help but be swayed by. And forgive any hints of sanctimoniousness on my part, despite my tendency to reference them on occasion.
Moons, give me strength!
We receive you, Tomberry. You've leave to retire. Well fought.
My thanks, Antlion. Tomberry disengaging.
Either way, with that being said, why not take yet another unforgettable journey down memory lane, heralding none other than the rockstar subjects of our latest revisitation experiment. Jaws on NES by the already defunct yet often shat on LJN, in association with the uncredited Atlus, and to some mysterious extent, Westone Bit Entertainment, with the latter being initially contracted to develop the fucking title. Konami's Contra franchise, the original Contra alongside Super C, this time alongside Contra 3 The Alien Wars, which despite having covered it then, I never had a physical copy until now, and its special guest Contra Hardcore, the latter two on Super NES and Genesis. Tecmo, now Koei Tecmo's Ninja Gaiden Trilogy, Chapter 1, and its 2 sequels, The Dark Sword of Chaos and Ancient Ship of Doom, all from 89 through 91, in spite of, once again, yours truly not owning the latter at the time. Our triple threat of randomized action platformers, HAL Laboratory and the also-defunct Humans Kabuki Quantum Fighter, aka Jigoku Gokuraku Maru, the also-defunct Jaleco and Natsume, now Natsume Atari's Shatterhand, aka Tokyo Shirei Soulbrain, and Vice Project Doom, aka Gundek, by Sammy, in association with the also-defunct Aicom, aka Yumakobo, all for the NES from 91. And lastly, Rambo on NES and Rambo 3 on Genesis, both by the also-defunct Acclaim and Pack-In Video, and Sega themselves, respectively. I don't even need to mention that Jaws and Rambo are based on their respective film franchises adapted from novels, both written by the late Peter Benchley and the award-winning David Morrell. As I've established and deliberated on before, it's adapted from the infamous, dreaded 4th film, The Revenge. It's a multi-tier action RPG coastal crusade to hunt down the titular Carcharodon Carcharius, Latin for rough tooth, rough skin, as a single diver, while constantly farming your ass off for conch shells underwater. The 3 most common foes during random underwater encounters are the stingrays, jellyfish, and baby sharks, all of which provide crabs for the diver's speed, 3 resulting in the highest, of course, and fuck no, I'm not referring to the goddamn STD, period! Stars for bonus points, which mean absolute dick all, and the earlier recounted conch shells for currency, with the latter being crucial for earning the tracking receiver upon reaching the eastern port with 5 of them. You can also sail back to the starting western port to increase both the boat and diver's attack power levels with 3 shells, plus every advancing level upon once again visiting the eastern port with yet another 5 shells. And wash, rinse, repeat, depending on how many shells you've accumulated. Obviously, it's currents for the diver's ass, in case he comes into contact with any of the hostile marine lifeforms, and since you only start with 3 lives, there's no continues whatsoever, so any naive as fuck habits of pissing about are ill-advised. A bonus scene is triggered at random, or upon exterminating a baby shark, during which you control a plane and obliterate as much of the jellyfish as possible for extra conch shells, which, as tedious as it can become like the underwater confrontations, is still fucking beneficial. In addition, upon more recent and frequent playthroughs and research procedures, the mini-submarine randomly appears when you've amassed 20 conch shells and or reached power level 5, armed with a shit ton of missiles and bombs, and possesses better maneuvering capabilities. Of course, the diver will be released should the mini-sub collide with any adversary. Control-wise, everything's a cinch to get the hang of. The D-pad for the basic movements, the boat, the diver, the plane, and even the mini-sub, plus B and A for their various actions, namely the diver's harpoons, the boat's bombs, and the mini-sub's only 2 weapons, plus the finale, which I'll discuss ASAP, despite the gameplay still being monotonous as all get out, no matter which phase you're dealing with. Challenge-wise, everything's pretty much a walk in the park, including that aforementioned slew of randomized underwater encounters, and especially finding Jaws, also at random, during and or in between said encounters, with or without the tracking receiver I might add, via its dorsal fin, or on the fly, or in this case during the swim. And when your attack power levels at 3 or higher, the odds of totally obliterating its fierce ass are higher than the summits of Mount Greylock in Lanesboro, McKinley aka Denali in Alaska, and Everest in the Himalayas combined. Getting back to that finale I brought up earlier, there's this brief, albeit chilling and intricate FPS phase where you have to get Jaws in position and ram the goddamn boat into its heart, which, not surprisingly, doesn't require much effort either. Use A to distract the limp dick, shit-brained shark fuck, thereby operating one of the 3 strobes, and then B to obliterate the son of a bitch once and for all. And once again, you're forced to hunt its ass down from the ground up if all 3 strobes are depleted. Booyah! That's what you fucking get! The graphics are still dull, albeit captivating as ever, with the ending not being much to write home about or jizz one's boxers over, and the music, orchestrated by Shinichi Sakamoto for the aforementioned already-defunct Westone Bit Entertainment, known for the Wonder Boy franchise and such, is middling, albeit cathartic, especially the opening title theme based on John Williams' original film score. Overall, my verdict still stands also, even to this day. Leave this fucking title by the side of the road and haul major ass like your natural born life depended on it! Or, if you're willing to, give it a whirl, your choice, but in cautious moderation only. Well, what do you know? One of the most gung-ho, extremely difficult franchises which many covet even now, needing absolutely no introduction whatsoever, considering Konami just put out Operation Galuga in collaboration with Way Forward, known for Shantae, Contra 4, you name it, more than half a year ago, turning out to be nothing more than a reimagining of the original. But let's rewind back to where it all began. Introduced into the arcades in '87, Contra is set in 2631 AD, obviously more than half a millennium from now, during which a meteorite has fallen into the Galuga archipelago near New Zealand, thereby enabling the fortification of the nefarious Red Falcon's massive frontline base within the vicinity, and the realization of their inevitable plot entailing a hostile global takeover, and the eventual fucking downfall of all humankind. Upon closer monitoring by military intelligence, it was decided that 2 elite commandos from the Earth Marine Corps' own Contra unit, Bill Reiser and Lance Bean, aka Mad Dog and Scorpion, what the Christ? As if we're going there today, were under orders to once and for all infiltrate and dismantle the Red Falcon's base. Regarding Super C, obviously the second Contra, it's set the very next year, during which Bill and Lance are sent on yet another mission concerning another goddamn takeover of an allied South American military base, not to mention the mental possession of the human comrades in arms on behalf of those very same fucking Red Falcon dick faces, which by the way they have to reverse one way or another, and even stand up to said brainwashed comrades in arms, plus a host of unfamiliar Red Falcon extraterrestrial sons of bitches. Gameplay-wise, what more could one expect out of one of the most iconic run-and-gun titles, but either a solo or a team mission, as you're battling endlessly through each and every region of both the Galuga and South American frontline bases, leading up to the Red Falcon's concluding lairs. As ever, in terms of control, you've got your right directional aiming, whether standing, crouching, flip jumping, or on the move, a variety of weapons that can be obtained and experimented with from the flying capsules, machine gun, flamethrower, except only in 2 types, wavy circles for the first Contra, with the other type in Super C involving holding down and releasing B to summon a slightly more vast burst than normal. Laser, rapid fire, which boosts the speed of any weapon, and even everyone's all-time fan favorite, the spread gun, all of which, isn't it obvious, are lost upon death. And since we're on the subject of the latter, if either Bill and or Lance get hit by a single bullet, collisions by random adversaries, or become exposed to any environmental or industrial threats, it's their asses, and in turn, yours! Also, considering there's codes for both 30 and 10 extra lives in both installments, with the former being devised by the late great Kazuhisa Hashimoto, may God rest his soul, forgive the cockiness and any form of bragging in advance, I've proved time and time again, as I'm sure everyone else has, not just through this revisited analysis, that it's still feasible to conquer both titles without either of them. It's all a matter of true awareness, knowing which targets to go for, what traps to circumvent, when to dodge every projectile, the works. Did I somehow forget to mention that the Mega Shell, aka the anti-Red Falcon screen nuke, that instantaneously makes each and every pissant's adversary in view your bitches at the drop of a hat, appears only once in the original Contra, specifically the snowfield, aka the Fortress of Ice, Area 5, and consistently all throughout various stages in Super C, plus the barrier that grants you temporary invincibility? As expected, the controls are a major walk in the park for one to adapt to, and paraphrasing Death to Smoochie, without all the extra bells and whistles and the ricketa-racketa, with the gameplay mechanics turning out to be far from a major motherfucking buzzkill. Well, depending on your skill level and patience, that is. Challenge-wise, as also expected, while there are certain instances where many get tripped up, with the obvious exception of the destructible bridge in the jungle at the beginning, and the security barriers and the 2 3D style bases, not to mention the tumbling boulders in areas 3 and 5 of both installments, but mostly the Red Falcon soldiers helming the mounted guns in the snowfield and onward, except for the goddamn alien's lair, that is. Massive armed jeeps that take a rather unimaginable ton of firepower to eradicate the shit out of. Flamethrower traps, spiked obstacles and walls, the homing larva-like insect gel spat out by the biomass cake holes in the walls, otherwise referred to as the waters, in the final areas, and expect to see them a lot in the later follow-ups, and even a ton of the spiked cells appearing out of the underpasses of Area 6 and Super C. I can go on for hours and never even goddamn exhaust myself even once. It never hurts to arrange a foolproof strategy in terms of working one's way around them. Ditto for confronting and massacring the blood-vomiting Christ out of every god-fucking damn end boss until the final. Speaking of which, here are my top 5 from both installments, with 2 honorable mentions. honestly, even today, the overall graphical presentation still kicks ass, recreating damn near every element of the original arcade parents, including the perspective shifts of the two 3D style bases in the original, akin to Sega's Phantasy Star, LJN and Atlus's Friday the 13th, the Goonies 2 and Getsu Fumiden, two other Konami works, not to mention Victor-Kai's Golgo 13 duology, and the two top view areas in the sequel, akin to SNK Ikari Warriors and even Rambo 3 by Sega, the latter of which I'm also revisiting later. And the varying music tracks don't disappoint in the least either, thanks to Hidenori Maezawa regarding both titles, alongside Kiyohiro aka Kyohei Sada, who co-composed the original Contra with Maezawa, based on Kazuki Muraoka's original arcade soundtracks. In fact, I take each and every song from either soundtrack line any day than Megan Thee Stallion, Jason Derulo, Kendrick Lamar, and Billie Eilish. God forbid! Overall, consider your life worth dick without both, shit if either, of these titles. Taking place years later, following the previous two offerings, and approximately half a decade between the events of what we're about to witness, there's no question that Red Falcon's continuing conspiracy entailing world domination and oppression against humanity know no bounds. However, our main pair of badass commandos are out to ensure that they're put to a fucking standstill. Enter Jimbo and Sully, descendants of both Bill and Lance, despite them appearing as the very same latter too, according to various sources. In the latter case, hardcore that is, the Unified Military Special Mobile Task Force KX, made up of Ray Poward and Sheena Etranzi, two flesh and blood soldiers not to be crossed, alongside the werewolf-like humanoid Brad Fang. It's payback time! Altered Beast, anyone? And the diminutive yet daring, hover rocket-toting CX-1DA300 combat robot Brownie, Blinky from Bucky O'Hare, move over, is tasked with confronting and bringing to justice master hackers that have hijacked unmanned robots across the area. Specifically, Soul Mercenary Deadeye Joe and freelance hacker Neumann Cascade, to name a few, plus taking on and toppling a former alien war hero turned warlord, the eternally ruthless Colonel Bahamut. While everything appears to be ditto like their two NES predecessors, 3 including Operation C on Game Boy, the deluge of changes and updates should be obvious, as you're treated to at least one M80 Helio bomb, aka Hypershell, per life in Alien Wars, and even a similar bomb variation in Hardcore. Both of which work the same exact way as the Mega Shells in the previous two, and can be acquired halfway through each stage, not to mention the same arsenal of varying weapons mixed with the all-new homing and crush nukes, both of which zone in on every opposing adversary based on Operation C's homing spread, and deal even more successive damage thanks to the latter's additional explosions, and the updated flamethrower in the Alien Wars, which creates a slightly longer stream, thereby torching any adversary in the way to fuck all. In Hardcore's case, one or two of the 4 main soldiers start off with a standard machine gun, but are capable of advancing their 4 weapon types marked A through D depending on which is obtained from the flying capsules. For Ray, he's got his Vulcan laser for Type A, crash nukes for Type B, spread gun for Type C, and homing missiles for Type D. Regarding Sheena, she's got her Genocide Vulcan for Type A, Shower Crash for Type B, Break Laser for Type C, and the Axe Laser for Type D. For Brad Fang, he's got his Beast Shooter for Type A, Power Punch for Type B, Flamethrower for Type C, and a Psychic Blaster for Type D. Oh, and here's the same weapon, except at full power. Of course, if you roll the shot button down, he'll unleash a more devastating blast. And finally, for Brownie, he's got his Victory Laser for Type A, Gemini Scatter for Type B, the Electromagnetic Yo-Yo for Type C, and Shield Chaser for Type D, and are also capable of switching between one of 2 positioning types while firing, akin to Treasure's Gunstar Heroes and Alien Soldier. In other words, hauling ass while still firing away, or just remaining immobile for accuracy. As ever, all weapons are lost upon a character's death, except for the barrier item in Alien Wars, which works in the same manner as the previous 2 offerings, in terms of the temporary invincibility angle. Getting back to the subject of the Alien Wars, there's only 6 stages, a third of which involve top-view situations entailing the decimation of every enemy-generating bunker while evading all forms of danger. The occupied city street, bombarded with a ton of Red Falcon soldiers, snipers, grenade throwers, guarded by 2 fortress gates, followed by the Magnus tank. And after surviving through a nightmarish firestorm caused by a random Air Force attack plane, concludes with a confrontation against the tortoise-like slave beast Taka, with more than just a long-ass neck and a flurry of single bullets, but also hives and maggots spewing from its shell and cake hull respectively, and even a devastating beam that generates from that same cake hull. The destroyed highway, hence the first of the 2 top view areas, where you're free to rotate the view by using L and R, crouch via B, and even refer to the map by using select, inhabited by even more merciless soldiers, massive bug-like crawler tanks, 5 dome defenders that have to be eradicated before proceeding, plus those infamous cracked pavement patches where you're best off hauling ass even after they collapse to shit while evading the instant death gaps. Ending with a turnpike face-off against the 6-segmented Bosco Spider, armed with turrets on each of said segments, a mobile tail cannon that fires off either a shitload of bullets on easy or normal, or a laser on hard, while spinning out of control and even launching and dropping out of control when near death. The Neo Kobe steel mill, inhabited by the rotating Ducker bots with built-in turrets, Gigaflies, the very same snipers, complete with eternally prolonging struggles against the mechanical flying attack pod armed with drills, referred to as the Tri-Transforming Wall Walker, also complete with a protruding shaft in the first form, which either Jimbo or Sully can cling onto, apart from the goddamn railings. Missiles randomly fired off while ascending through the structure in form number 2. And even the same 2 drills that'll ram into their asses if they're cornered, while 2 spiked railings are revealed in the 3rd form, as long as there's a possible opening to its fucking dead ringer core. Followed by an attack UFO carrier, referred to as the Garth base. Wait! You'll never afford it! Live in the now! Seriously, not going there today. That unloads tons of grenades before dispatching the winged soldiers. With 2 Terminator-like attack robots, one in blue and the other in brown, or mahogany if some prefer, both awkwardly named Kenny, capping off the struggle. ending with their gigantic great-grandpa lurking behind the walls, Big Fuzz, equipped with tracking eye lasers, the 720-degree clockwise motion streaming breath of fire at various speeds depending on the game's difficulty, slow for easy, medium for normal, and fast for hard. And even leaving 6 timed bombs to escape from upon being set off. An auto-scrolling jet bike shootout from within the tunnel and through the desert highway against the persistent onslaught of invaders, whether with machine guns attached to said hover bikes or unloading the usual shitloads of Molotovs. Fly around in jetpacks, and even a ninja-like android armed with a hook, sword, and star, while Jimbo and Sully defend themselves via their helicopter's missile. Over which an ultimate fully armed air battleship, the anti-Contra Rodriguez, looms, guarded by numerous other opposing vehicles and adversaries, including a high-speed tank and the bipedal Tetranducker Walker bot with a cannon-armed brain. Until reaching the battleship's core and 2 guarding force field cannons in between via the very same helicopter's barrage of missiles. Mucho Grande Badlands and its steep cliffs, hence the second and final top view area, inhabited by the very same crawler tanks, except in orange, plus the ants-like extraterrestrials referred to as Aggies, both in red, orange, and a mix of muddy brown and green, and their 5 designated nests, or generators if you will, that also have to be destroyed before moving on, while avoiding and or being wary of both the randomized circular and linear sand traps. Not to mention the fucking exploding bridges on which you're forbidden to open fire, otherwise the soldiers' asses will careen into the goddamn abyss far below! Oh, before I forget, those very same bridges can be used to trap the enemies as well. Ending with yet another prolonging goddamn struggle against a cycloptic organic hard-shelled alien construct by the name of Scorpabella aka Antel that summons centipedes in flame around a massive sand trap, which you're best off spinning yourself around to counteract the trap's movement upon dealing enough damage to such an aggravating abomination. Did I forget to mention you can also farm for the weapons you don't have from the clawed centipedes? And finally, the Red Falcon's new main base, reminiscent of the last 2 areas from the previous offerings, featuring the same plethora of adversaries, including the return of the goddamn Orient, that same Spike's demonic, gargantuan, dragon-like son of a bitch Java that summons scallops, referred to as bundles, from its pie hole, and the heart-like Gomoramos King with its 4 eggs that disperse shitloads of face huggers, otherwise referred to as buggers, from the first Contra. The cicada-like shadow beast Kimco from Super C, with a human face, almost man-like in a way, hidden underneath its membrane this time, that flat-out goes berserk, being more on the move, sliding across the ground, digging itself underneath, and rising to make a huge leap, unleashes its gel showers from its tube legs while firing off its gel beams from its peeper. The winged cycloptic metal alien vicious slavehawk that does way more than fly around. It's capable of fiercely ramming into your ass, and even tail-whipping your ass while teleporting when near death. And lastly, Emperor Demon Gava, aka the Big JF from the very same aforementioned Super C, with the same 2 snakes it summons from both sides, that can also summon the same dickhead Orient creatures while raining down bullets. And upon death, transforms into the cycloptic brain, Searle, which can perform 8 different attacks depending on which orb is fired at, one of which can summon any weapon you're still in need of, while launching exploding spikes no less. Not to mention can summon 2 legs that you have to move about to avoid getting killed, as well as a dark gray, red, and orange spotted serpentine-like creature that slithers about, a collection of 8 gray and peach orbs that appear around you until you destroy the hell out of them, and before I forget, the bomb's the most useful against that shit. Rows of stone, in stacks of 2 or 3 that constantly tumble depending on the difficulty level, and even a shitload of destructible eyes, indestructible dark blue spheres, and even a shield of extra brain mass that protects the creature, plus a special final form if you're playing on hard mode. Contra Hardcore, however, is an entirely different ball of wax. 1 or 2 of the main 4 begin their ongoing string of missions in the decimated city, overrun with unmanned machines and various cybernetic Zako soldiers up the ass. Regarding the former, you'll eventually face the massive centipede-like M78 beast and a crazed 4-legged bot. Followed by the gargantuan cycloptic humanoid Maximum Jumbo. high-powered ninja Murasame, piloted by a mysterious mercenary by the name of Deadeye Joe, introduced upon the penultimate's extermination. From there, two choices will be imposed upon you, and this one and all is where that branching path system I've been mentioning time and time again comes in, akin to two other Konami titles, Castlevania III Dracula's Curse, and YY World 2 SOS from Parsley Castle. Not to mention Atomic Robo Kid by the already defunct UPL, Trico, and Micronics. And Taito's Darius franchise. To either pursue Deadeye Joe and or one of his clones, leading to a highway battle on Jet Bike, or visit the research center to help a distressed scientist, Dr. Geo Mandrake, leading to an airspace battle with help from the air police, while taking on the Necroid soldiers hatched out of tank missiles. The return of the Rocket Ninja, and even the heavily armed aircraft Wonderbird that sets off energy orbs and streams of flame, all before reaching the latter destination. I mean, seriously, how endless are such possibilities as these? There's even situations involving the infiltration of said research center, overtaken by the human Zako soldiers, ending with a gargantuan, cybernetic skull-like behemoth reminiscent of Big Fuzz from Alien Wars that summons blocks of scrap and gets easily pissed off when they're destroyed. Followed by the pursuit of that lard-ass freelance hacker prick Neumann Cascade, whose lab is in an underground facility beneath the junkyard infested with bikers, more attack bots, and even the debut of the junk-based behemoth Dustman, not to be confused with the Robot Master for Mega Man 4, who, as a little trivia, was designed by a pre-One Punch Man Yusuke Murata, otherwise going by his alias 1, also responsible for designing Crystal Man in Mega Man 5 for the record. Just before approaching the virtual zone of Cascade, putting even the likes of the Lawnmower Man to absolute fucking contempt, where the following simulated targets appear: Taurus, Sagittarius, and Gemini, whose shapes are devised by the constellations that Cascade transforms into. Likewise for the Tetris tank and helicopter forms, manifested by Cascade Square Terror. Leading up to a perilous faraway jungle, inhabited by swarms of mutant zombies, referred to as Ukis, various living plants, including the penny flowers, and bug-like organisms, including the winged lizards and dumplings, not to mention the skeletal insectoid hybrid giants concealed in the waterfall, referred to as the Meow Kappa. mindless metallic two-legged attack sphere, referred to as the evil snowman. Granted, it's no bad Mr. Frosty, but what the hell can you do? Whose aerodynamic techniques put even the likes of Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey, and even Cirque du fucking Soleil to irreversible goddamn contempt, and is capable of fusing with its clone halfway through the battle, leading up to the return of Deadeye Joe, or again, one of his clones, in his Longhand Guy mecha vessel, which appears in three-phase oriented forms, in green with arms capable of navigating the ceiling, in orange with a single claw, a rotor, regenerating arm, and a reflecting laser, and in red with more of the same, except the laser's only generated while its view shifts approximately 810 degrees counterclockwise. And yes, I took it upon myself to calculate the fucking trajectory. Nearby island base where a trap is orchestrated by not only Bahamut and his own goddamn private army, but also the very same Dr. Geo Mandrake, who, dramatic pause, is in cahoots with the corrupt-ass Colonel. During which the Monster Genesis machine summons 5 different pre-fused creatures via teleportation. Christ, Seth Brundle from The Fly much? All hybrids of the various enemies from the jungle area, no less. Ending with the crab-like aberration Fukenshane that makes Scorpion Sentinel from Final Fantasy VII look like fucking Spider Baby from Toy Story. Plus more intense, non-stop battles aboard a military train against a duo of twin cyborgs with massive cock cannons attached at their spines, referred to as the Pulley Gunner Brothers. The final count gun that fires off plasma beams when the exclamation point pops up on its display, and the only way to obliterate it is to make the cannon fire upon its core by using yourself as bait, reminiscent of the Gapsule fight in Sonic & Knuckles, out the same fucking year for the record. And even the extremely agile Power Ninja Yokozuna, not to be confused with the late WWE, formerly WWF, wrestler, may God rest his soul, capable of stopping the military train and armed with a shitload of missiles, the red and blue molecule bombs, the same shit seen in previous Contra installments no less, plus summoning waves of fire, not to mention Colonel Bahamut himself, and more impending alien aberrations leading to various outcomes, thereby beefing up the fucking replay value in a way no one's ever fantasized over, ever. Did I forget to mention there's even a secret area leading up to a slew of random confrontations and an alternate outcome, which I'm amicably avoiding to spoil for everyone's sake? The control mechanics for both installments are solid as ever. In other words, should you happen to fuck up in any mission whose chances are higher than the Twin Towers pre-9/11, it was your own goddamn blunder in the first place, and the gameplay framework's extremely short of a repetitious shit attack like before. As opposed to the first two Contra installments, considering how tolerable and satisfactory as Alien Wars and Hardcore are, their elements of challenge defy both falling from the roof of Willis Tower in Chicago, stoned in headfirst, minus any parachutes, and running a marathon through 5 towns, urban, suburban, rural, commercial, industrial, who gives a shit, blindfolded, on 2 hands, and shit-faced during a fucking hailstorm with a Scottish Claymore sword shoved 3/4 of the way up your own ass, the likes of which I strongly advise against attempting, for everyone's safety no less. The same strategies I've also advised earlier apply here, likewise for varying your strategies depending on both the difficulty settings for Alien Wars and the unbelievably diverse area of branching paths and unique character traits in Hardcore. In the Alien Wars, not only are you capable of firing both weapons simultaneously in both the traditional side-scrolling areas and the top view areas by holding L, R, and Y, the only way to see the real best deserved ending is if you conquer the game in hard mode, akin to Ninja Turtles 4 Turtles in Time, released the exact same god motherfucking damn year. And And before I forget, you're provided 3, 5, or 7 lives and 4 continues in Alien Wars, regardless of difficulty setting no less. And 1 to 3 lives and 4 continues in Hardcore, the likes of which I also suggest avoiding overusing, whereas in the Japanese versions of both outings, there's a 30 life code for Alien Wars, aka Contra Spirits, and even infinite continues for Hardcore, complete with a 3 unit health meter per life, despite having been unexpectedly excluded for the US and European equivalents, which I more than imagine still pisses everyone off to the max, even to this very day. Either way, regarding my top 6 bosses in both installments, this time minus any honorable mentions. Specifically, for two highly regarded console-exclusive follow-ups to an ongoing series, there isn't any form of dull, uninviting elements whatsoever in each and every in-game event for both offerings, plus the determination of the presiding main protagonists, Jimbo, Sully, Ray, Sheena, Fang, and Brownie, is evident in how they interact with both the supporting characters and their opposing rivals. Likewise for the pre-stage briefings laid down by Commander Doyle, and the mid-stage and post-stage dialogue elements involving the latter four main soldiers in Hardcore. And how the hell can anyone go wrong with the advanced detail of each and every area, let alone the infinite assortment of mechanical and macabre extraterrestrial adversaries? Their respective soundtracks are far from dull-ass moments as well, thanks entirely to the already retired Miki Higashino. For more info on her, refer to my Ninja Turtles, Gradius, and Tokimeki Memorial reviews, numbers 13, 21, and 71, Masanori Adachi, and Tappy Iwase for the Alien Wars, and Hiroshi Kobayashi, Akira Soji, Kenji Miyaoka, Michiru Yamane, Akira Yamaoka, Hirofumi Taniguchi, and Aki Hata, the latter who was also part of Treasure at the time, known for Dynamite Headdy and Light Crusader amongst many. And in spite of the minimal, albeit underwhelming use of vocal sound bites in both titles, heard like so. The other participating sound effects, including the various gunfire deployments, and the prominent, often recurring batches of explosions, never fail to amuse us all, even to this very day. Overall, as is the case with the previous two Contra offerings, consider yourself a major, naive, bleeding heart fuckstick to leave these two ultimate 16-bit ass kickers out in the goddamn cold.
You